So the scripture, trust in the Lord with all thine heart and lean not
Did
on...
you get that on that?
No. Lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths.
That's true, and I know it is. Then if a person is trying to be obedient to the commandments and trusts in the Lord and has faith, then their lives are bound to be directed somewhat by the Spirit. And I say I know that's true. Scripture says so, and I know from experience.
I also am sure that that's true, because I know from experience too.
I don't think there was any mistake that I was transferred down to San Diego in the Army and all those things. I got a little background of missionary work there. In fact, I made a friend there that's a friend even to this day. He became superintendent of this Provo City Schools. And he's retired and living down in Provo at the present time. His name was Clifton Moffett. Well, Dr. Moffett taught at BYU in some summer schools. In fact, I took a class in educational administration from him one summer. But he was the presiding elder down in San Diego, and we used to go and stay with him on weekends. And later we came together in school meetings several times, and he was always a good friend.
What was your transportation when you'd go on dates?
Well, the automobile came in before I was very old. Here's an example. We did go down to Ephraim a few times to see the Ephraim girls. See, we weren't very stable. We chased around. But we used to pay High Mers $1 to ride in his Buick. We had a Buick that didn't have any doors on and just had a little opening where you got in. And they had a two-seated affair, so a half dozen of us could get in that car with him.
High Mers is a married man.
He'd charge $1 a piece. I don't know whether he courted anyone down there or not.
Well, go down there for it and see what's the difference.
Collect $1 a piece.
He made $1 by going down there, and of course he had to buy gas out of that.
$1 a piece.
$1 a piece.
How many would go?
Oh, not more than a half dozen at the time.
That's $6.
You know?
Now that'd have been when you were in high school.
Yes, that was when I was in high school.
That's pretty fair money, isn't it?
I had a few girlfriends down there that we'd date, and I didn't go down there very much, so just occasionally, for a lark, you know. I knew Olive Peterson, and she was the daughter of the old Bishop of Peterson of Ephraim, and Margaret Stevens. I don't know just where she fit in the family. And Una Fountain. I took her to a dance once. She was related to the Chris Thompson family, which you don't know, but we're always friendly with my father and their family, because Chris Thompson used to shear sheep with Father. So as I say, they were always friendly.
What was it about the Ephraim girls? Just that they were different from the Mount
Oh,
Pleasant girls?
you know, it's always pastures are greener on the other side of the fence.
Sounds
They
like
were good dancers, and I liked to dance.
Sounds like you saw a lot of different girls.
I did.
20 or 30 in each town.
Well,
Well, that's healthy, you know. If we did more of that today, it would be a lot better off. And how often did you go on dates and so on?
oh, I couldn't afford it to go many times. Very often. At least until I started earning money for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And after I got to working on the threshing machine with Father, keeping the books for the company, I got to making pretty good money. And that's why in my last 2 years of school, I went right through.
You mean in high school?
The way I quit, yes.
So it was...
I had to kind of repeat because if I leave classes or a unit of study and go away, I'd lose credit for that, you see, and I had to make it up by going extra time, and as I said, it took me 5 years to graduate from high school. And I didn't take it too seriously then.
You'd leave school to work.
No.
Is that, what kind of work was it you'd leave school for?
I'd go with Father out shearing.
Those are the times you went to Wyoming.
And I stayed with school to the finish the last year, but the school excused me for a couple of weeks to work with the surveyor. A man by the name of Graves from Ephraim came up and surveyed for the cement walks that were put in all over Mount Pleasant. And I went with him and drove the pegs and held the rod for the surveying and so on.
Uh-huh.
And he was my friend as long as I ever met him. In fact, the Sorensons, when they had their 35th wedding anniversary in the Armory Hall, it was right at the time that we were getting ready to go to the Mexican border. That's the year I graduated from high school. And I met this Graves and worked with him for the last 2 weeks. And then we were called, like I told you, to go to the Mexican border.
Right out of high school.
Right out of high school. So that meant quite a lapse in my education, you see. Till I got back into college again in 1921.
So, later years of high school, when you were making your own money, you were able to date once or twice a week, or?
Well, we had a dance nearly every Friday night. Usually had during the winter a basketball game every Friday night too somewhere. And we weren't supposed to dance during that period of time in training, you know.
Uh-huh.
Of course, that didn't keep us from dating the girls.
Uh-huh.
Down in Manti, we ran around half the night, got out of the hotel with the girls, my cousin included, Ruby Madison. That was one of Mother's oldest sisters who married Chris Madison of Manti. And Ruby was always friendly. She was my age, I think she might have been a year younger. But we always met friendly in the dances as we went around the county. And we were, they used to have commencement dances too in the high school graduation, and field days and so on, where they go from one town to another. And Well, maybe Manti would have it one time and another city another time. Those were big occasions when we'd get
You
out.
was a basketball star?
What?
You were a basketball star, and you said basketball kept you in school.
Yes, that's.
What kind of field day was that you had?
Well, we'd have contests in athletics, and then we'd have big programs.
That was once a year?
Yes, that was usually in the spring when they were about ready to graduate from with the class in high school. Of course, these weren't graduation exercises. They were usually spring events that brought us together, and track meets and so on.
Now, later on when you taught, you coached some of these things, or did you?
Well, of course, I started out in the junior high school and taught there for 17 years, or better, more than that, about 21, I guess.
Taught math there?
Taught in the junior high.
Did you teach math?
I taught math most of the time.
So everything.
What is it?
And you taught just about everything there.
Yeah, I started out teaching geography and literature and reading. But when Leonard Thompson moved back to Ephraim, that left us without a math teacher, and so I took over the math. I always liked math in school. I didn't do too well when I had to leave school and go to work, and those years I had to kind of repeat.
Oh, we taught physical education in the junior high.
Yes,
years.
And I also had contests for those different classes. I'd take them to different ones in the neighboring towns and play basketball in the winter and spring months.
Did he tell you how he always taught us our march for the junior prom?
No.
All during high school, when we had the junior prom, he was the one that taught the march. Taught the juniors the march. And I remember he taught us the year that I was a junior. He taught the march. He was one of the, I guess, the best coach of military marching and that they had in town.
You were saying that when that man moved to Ephraim, then you taught the math classes. Tom Brady was his name?
No, Tom Brady was the captain of the military.
Mm-hmm.
When I started out as a young man. Well, after he sort of retired, when I came home from the Army as an officer, he turned this, told the school that they didn't need to come to him anymore for the military drills. They had the Grand March, and that was largely what it was called. To begin with, it meant march. And there were certain formations that I taught them, and I made up the drills there for. After that, I think the first one is about when Carlson
Well, he was the one that marched with me.
president of the class. I think that was about the time I started. I didn't get in on the first one, but I did in all.
That'd be about 1928, because
Well, it wasn't that late.
I thought you were.
I started,
before
I
that.
think, about 2 years after I went into junior high school teaching, so that'd be about 1924 25 that I started, and from then on to the time I retired from school, there were only a few years while I was principal that I turned the march over to the man that's down there now. No, it was to Byron Memmott. Do you remember Memmott?
No.
Well, he came in to teach agriculture, and he taught the marches there for a few years. And outside of that, you see, from 1925 on to about 1961, I directed the marches for the junior class. And the marches for graduation. We got on to using this Hollywood march, this hesitation march, and I used that with the senior class. And actually, I think I started the idea of having caps and gowns for graduation, because it was right during my time, and we started using caps and gowns. And I was the advisor for the senior class. And from the time I went into high school in 1939, I think I always directed the march for the graduation march.
Telling about some of the trips you took with basketball team?
Wait a minute. You said that you went into high school in 39. Now, you've been principal of the junior high school.
Principal in junior high school.
But you were also a teacher.
Yeah, I
You
taught.
could only be principal part-time.
I also taught when I was in the high school, and as principal too. I always had at least 2 classes.
So when you went into the high school in 39, what brought that about?
Well, the thing that they decided to reorganize and renew the school, and they brought in Dean Bench as principal of the high school, and he stayed there for 5 years. And then following him was a man by the name of Bennett, and he came in for 1 year, and I don't know why he didn't stay any longer, but he left. And then following Bennett, I became principal of high school, and was the principal of high school for 9 years.
Did you apply for it, or did they come to you and ask you?
Well, actually, one of the board members suggested to me that I apply for it.
And that was the time you were still principal of the junior high?
Well, no.
You were teaching in the high school?
I was teaching in the high school at the time.
What made you decide to go from teaching, principal of junior high to teaching high school?
Well, I didn't decide that. They decided that for me. As I say, they reorganized, put the school all under one head, supposing that it would make a little easier to handle, and it would be a more united school. However, they didn't stay with that idea very well. They changed superintendents quite a bit then. A.E. Jones was our principal while I was in the junior high school. When he left, superintendent, yes, I should have said. He was a superintendent of schools, and we got along fine at that time. But then, when some of these others came in, a man by the name of Andrews came in, and he was there for just a couple of years. Lewis Peterson was superintendent for a while too. Of course, during that time was while I was in the junior high school. But then Andrews came in, and that's when this reorganization took place. And Bagnall was made superintendent. And he and Pence didn't get along too well together.
So anyway, by the time you were made principal of the high school, you no longer had to be principal of both junior high and high school.
Well, the school was a big part of, while I was there, they were under one head.
While you were
Finally,
principal?
the last couple of years, I think they did change that, and they put in Verley Johansson as principal of the junior high school.
The last couple of years?
And I was teaching there. Not while I was principal, but while I was teaching. You see, the last 6 years, I was relieved of the principalship and
just
taught school.
Yeah. And it was while you were, that last 6 years that they, so while you were, they put 2 principals again. So while you were there, As principal, you were both the junior high and the high
Both
school?
the junior high and the high school. Because that's the way it was under Bench when they reorganized, and they left it that way while Bennett was there for 1 year. And after those 6 years, then I was put in. As I say, one of the board members suggested to me that I apply for it.
Do you remember any particular summer meetings, summer outings or camping trips? Summer outings or camping trips? We already talked about sheep herding. Did you ever go out and herd sheep for several weeks at a time?
No.
Did you have any?
No, only these little flocks of my father when I went out on Hoodoo Hill would take care of them. The Syndergaards lived in the house at that time. But,
How long did you stay with them on the hill?
it was during the summer months that I heard this little bunch of sheep.
Might you have stayed there several days running?
Yes, we had them trailed out there, and we let them out during the daytime, and kind of keep track of them there in the sagebrush. But outings, when you talk about that, there was quite an important event happened when I was superintendent of the state mutuals. I told you I always had something to do with scouts. And during this time, President Nielsen was president of the stake, and we asked permission of the Provo organization to join them in the Bryce Canyon Council of Boy Scouts. And that summer was the first that we ever joined with them on a camp. And the scout executive, A.A. Anderson, he was a great scouter. An old silver-haired man, but he was a great scouter, as I say. And he had charge of all the scouts around Provo and all of the cities to the south. But then President Nielsen requested that we organize with them. So we had a camp up at Bossier, and we took all of our Sanpete scout troops up there, and A.A. Anderson came and directed the camp. And people came up from town at night to join us in our campfire programs. We always had an evening program around the campfire where the scouts would take part, you know. It happened that in order to get up there and with our stuff, that I took a wagon team, and my wife went with me, and Clayton and Wilma came, and I had a big tent at that time, 10 by 12 tent, and I used to pitch that on the lot at home too, by the way, and sometimes the girls would sleep in there. But this time when we went on the mountain, it came in handy, and we camped there with the scouts for several days, and we got a start with them, and that's ever since that time they belonged to the Utah Parks Council. Bryce Canyon it was called to begin with, Bryce Canyon Council, but later it was called the Utah Parks because there were other parks that they would visit too and stay at, like Zion's and what's that other color from, well, that's Bryce Canyon, but there's Zion's National Park and others.
It was grand a little further.
But that was quite a thing, you know, for our people to get organized with this Provo outfit and get professional scouting started in our area.
When's the first that you had scouting combined with the mutual?
As I remember it, it was about 1908. And the first scouting was done in our state, in the church. It didn't come to Mount Pleasant at that time. It was years later when it got out that far. And they got scout organizations.
What sorts of things did you do on these campouts?
Well, we'd carry on the regular scouting program, and we'd have instructors of different crafts come and teach them. For instance, there was a shoemaker from Manti, who was a great scouter in handicraft, chiseling out, carving out wood and so on. And he'd come up and when we had our camps, and Barton, you knew Barton from Ephraim, didn't you, Lucille?
Yeah.
Well, he was a scouter too, and he came up and helped us one summer when we had to camp up at the lakes there by the Candlin Mountain. I've forgotten what the name of that reservoir now, the lake was. But we used to plan a summer scouting trip nearly every summer. And Calvin, Kristen, and I worked together on it.
Did you participate as a scout when you were young?
Man, I never was a scout.
There never was a program.
There wasn't a program at that time. I did meet some scouts, though. They were very... when we went into the Army to prepare for the World War I, we were assigned to build gun pits down at Camp Kearney, and our captain was Captain Mabee, and Mabee was from Bountiful. He was a banker up at Bountiful. He later, after the war, he became the governor of the state of Utah. And he came down to visit our town once for a program. He presented me with one of his books. He was a poet. He wrote a book of poems.
Want me to come?